One interesting RDF feature that enhances the flexibility of modeling RDF graphs is the use of blank nodes. Using URIs for each RDF resource has the downside that everything in a graph should be identified. But sometimes this is not possible or desirable. For example, when user-specific data should be kept private. Or in our case, the reviews of a movie should not be identified. Therefore, blank nodes could be modeled in our RDF graph. A blank node is a resource without an URI. It is also called an anonymous resource. In RDF, a blank node can only be used as subject or object. I will show you now how to model a blank node in the RDF turtle syntax. Adding a blank node to our graph is fairly simple. Let's add a review to our movie Kingdom of Heaven. First, we need a predicate that links the subject Kingdom of Heaven with our blank nodes, which should be a review. So we start with a linking predicate. In this case, I call it just has review. And then we add the blank node, which is defined by an underscore combined with a colon. So here is an underscore, that is a colon, and that's it. Now we can name our blank node. In this case, we call it review 1. And we can add another review, which we call review 2. So now we added 2 blank nodes through the predicate has review. Now that we added 2 blank nodes to our movie, we can add more information to each node. Let's make it fairly simple. We start with our review 1. And if you want, you can add a class or a type to this review. For example, concepts review. But to be honest, this is not always needed for blank nodes. Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes not. For now, I will leave it out. This is just a simple node, could be anything. And we add a rating. Each review should have a rating. And then we add a simple review text. For example, the film was great, so a great and entertaining film or movie. For our second review, we also add a rating. And this rating was not as good as the previous one, so let's give it a score of 4. And the review text is also quite satisfying or okay. Something like a visually stunning movie with great actors. The style that I used to define these blank nodes is called unnested. So I added 2 unnested blank nodes. But to increase the readability, we can also style our blank nodes as nested blank nodes. So let's delete the link to review 1 and review 2 and just add a square bracket. And now this is basically a new subject that is opened, an anonymous subject. That's a good way to define blank nodes because in my first example, I named the blank nodes. But as I mentioned, blank nodes are usually not identified. And even if they have a name, they somehow now have an identificator. By using square brackets, I don't need to define an identificator and therefore can define the properties right away. So now I can just say, okay, there is some review. It doesn't need to have a name. And this review has a rating of 5. And it has a review text, which I just can copy in this case. Now I can close the blank node with a semicolon, and I can also add another one. Let's add another one. Concepts has review. And then I can paste the second review into it. Now I showed you how to define unnested blank nodes, and I also showed you the preferable way to add nested blank nodes. After modeling the blank nodes, just upload it to our graph and let's see how our blank nodes are represented in our graph visualization. So when you upload the modified RDF file, you will recognize that all the blank nodes are listed as subjects and of course also as objects of the subject Kingdom of Heaven. When you go to the visual graph of Kingdom of Heaven, you will recognize that these blank nodes are not shown. They are not shown here as nodes, and they are also not shown as literals. The reason for this is that the visual graph feature of GraphDB only shows nodes with an URI. Since the blank nodes do not have any URI, they are not shown in the visual graph. However, that does not mean that they don't exist. They are still there, but only as datasets that need to be queried. For now, keep in mind, the blank nodes do exist. The only difference between normal nodes is that they don't have a URI and therefore are not visualized by GraphDB. In the end, I have a small challenge for you to practice the modeling of blank nodes. So we have now 2 reviews added to our movie. I want that you add a comment to the review blank node, and this comment resource should also be modeled as a blank node. Pause the video and I will show you the solution in a few seconds. I start by adding a blank node to the second review. Basically, the second review just has a new predicate. We call it review comment. And then we add as an object another blank node. Ensure that the previous statement is finished with a semicolon. And in this second blank node, which is nested in the upper blank node, so the comment blank node, we add a simple text to it. This is important, don't finish the blank node with a dot, either with nothing, like I did with the other blank nodes, or with a semicolon. Save the comment and check if your turtle file can upload it to your graph database. If you want to learn more about ontologies, linked data, and the semantic web in general, I can highly recommend my Udemy course. There you will not only learn all the basics about RDF, but also about the query language SPARQL, automated inference of new information using reasoning, and developing your own ontology-based apps. You can find the link to the course in the video description.